Okay, well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar Wednesday. It's April the 1st. I don't know where March went, but we're in April, so that's exciting. Looking for some snow here in North Dakota, another nice Easter snow this weekend. So we'll see how that turns out for everybody around here. Anyway, so today we're just really excited to have Erin Bain from the American Income Life Insurance Company. They have our special risk division and hold our insurance through 4-H, and we pay every year for them to insure us, and she will tell us more about that. But a little commercial for other webinar Wednesdays coming up. We have one on April the 22nd, and I know that's during support staff conference, but it will be recorded, and that's with Stacy Winter from purchasing, and she's going to be talking about contracts and who can sign them and when you need a contract and when you don't need a contract. So that's on April 22nd, and then on May the 20th, Sam Lawman, our animal science specialist, she's going to be talking about working with fairs and achievement days. So get those on your calendar, and I'll be sending out information on those as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Erin. She's ready to go. And so if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box, and I will help facilitate that. Thank you, Erin.
Megan, as Megan said, I think she's recording this, and I also will send a PDF of my PowerPoint to her and a couple other like things that I reference. I'll send her PDFs of that. So don't panic too much about like trying to take notes. And if you have questions, during, like she said, feel free to type it in the chat box, or hopefully we'll have time after I go through all the slides. I can, ask some individual questions and stuff like that. So thanks. Yeah, it is. I've been telling everybody today it's March 32nd because we're not April Fool's is canceled this year. We don't have time for that. Um, so welcome to this today. I'm going to go through all of this kind of quickly, and but want everyone to have time to ask questions at the end. So. First thing, my name is Erin Bain. I am the director of the AIL Special Risk Division. I have been in with the company for just over 10 years now. But prior to joining AIL, I was a county 4-H educator in North Carolina, a 4-H camp director in Virginia, and grew up as a 4-H'er in Virginia as well. So I've been around 4-H for significant portion of my life. Won't tell you years at the moment, but a long time. And while I miss some of the fun stuff of being a county educator, I really enjoy that I get to still work with 4-H folks who are the best people in the world, but I don't ever have to drive a 15-passenger van full of middle schoolers or sleep in a twin bunk bed. So that's what I tell everybody is my kind of good situation right now. So a few things to kind of just give you the highlights. So our policies are specifically blanket group accident insurance, which is different in scope and benefits from a liability policy. In general, when folks are asking about liability coverage, those are the kinds of policies that are $500,000, $1 million coverage, and are in a different bracket as ours in terms of cost as well. We started working with 4-H and Extension when the division began in 1952, and our motto is serving those who serve others. So that's something that we take really seriously. The annual policies that we do that North Dakota, like the one North Dakota takes out for statewide, have always been $1 per person for the year. Special activities have gone up a little bit since then, but the last time we raised prices on those was, I want to say 2008. So, or nine. So it's been a long time since we've even had a change on that. So we really want this all to be affordable and practical for every type of extension program, 4-H and otherwise. So in addition to 4-H, we do work with all other extension program areas. So if you have colleagues in your office in ag, natural resources, in family and consumer sciences, in community development, any of those other kind of areas that you think could also benefit from knowledge about these types of policies, please feel free to pass this information along or kind of encourage them to look into it for programs in particular. But we work with all of the extension professional associations as well as other community organizations like FFA, camps, college and universities, student tour companies, all of those kind of programs. So 4-H and Extension is kind of our bread and butter. And that's why I was hired initially, again, was because of that my background in that area versus any insurance specialty that I had. Um, but it's been good for me to be able to come in and kind of speak the language because as anybody who has been with Extension for any period of time knows, sometimes your friends and family and other people just don't quite know what you're talking about. So it's a special kind of world. So being able to come in and understand kind of what folks are going through and what they're dealing with has been very helpful. Um, so we have two different types of policies. Again, both are blanket group accident coverage. They are low cost. We have that is something that we're very proud of. We want to keep it affordable for everybody. It does provide blanket coverage for accident ranging from minor scrapes up to major injuries. I always say kind of anything more than a Band-Aid. Sometimes we might be able to provide coverage for it. Um, we are a very small staff, so including myself, there are 4 of us full-time here at the division. Accounting is a one-person department, claims is a one-person department, but we feel like it is very important for you to be able to get a real human on the phone or via email pretty quickly when you reach out to us, and that's something that we pride ourselves on. So definitely feel like that is a benefit to if you've ever had to deal with any kind of personal insurance claim. You might know how difficult it can sometimes be. We do not have a network of providers or medical facilities or restrictions on that for our purposes. That is not to say that you don't need to still possibly be aware of any of those kind of network restrictions for folks that may be also utilizing their personal major medical coverage, but we do not have any restrictions on that. We also don't have any deductibles on our coverage specifically. Our policies are written in order to be primary, which means that in most circumstances, if folks do not have personal major medical through, whether it's a parent or guardian's job or whatever the marketplace, any of those kind of, options, whether they have personal coverage, if do not need personal coverage, we can pay primary. If they do have personal coverage, in most cases, they elect to have us pay as secondary or supplementary to make sure that it gets processed properly through their personal major medicals so that they're not left with, you know, unpaid deductibles and those types of things or coverage questions. We do try to make quick decisions and pay our claims as quickly as possible. A lot of times there's a hurry up and wait aspect to that because we have to wait for all of the paperwork to come in. And again, if you've ever had any personal medical billing, you know that sometimes it takes a month or two for them to even send you a bill for something. So once we have all of the things that we need, we do try to pay.
I think Aaron frozen?
Am I frozen?
No, you're
You
good. You're
were,
good.
yeah, you're good now.
You're good. Okay.
Okay. Could you hear me? Or it does say I just got a note that my internet.
We couldn't hear you.
Let me see.
I
Am
can
I
hear
frozen
you.
again?
You were. Do you want to turn your camera off, maybe?
Yeah, let me try that and see if that helps. A lot of times that will help with the bandwidth.
Okay.
Um, okay. So where did it cut off on my little bullets here? Are you able to see? Let's see.
We heard about the 10 to 14 days.
Okay. Okay. So that hopefully that's the main thing. But ultimately what we're trying to do is reduce your stress levels. The annual policy that North Dakota takes out for all of your enrolled 4-Hers is $1 per person per year for regular members, $2 per person for horse, ATV, and team sports members. Um, Team sports, typically, when we're talking about that, is basketball, soccer type sports versus like a robotics team or a shooting sports team. Shooting sports and livestock are covered under the regular dollar per person rate. Horse, ATV, and team sports are the only things that are that $2. Um, this policy does provide coverage for all members during scheduled adult supervised group activity. And that would include things like club meetings, workshops, camps, etc., but not individual or family project work. So kiddos who are working with their steer that they're raising for fair, or the 3 members of the Smith family who are in the shooting sports club practicing archery in their backyard would be covered. Adult leaders are counted and covered under this policy. In terms of what the definition and what categories of volunteers are covered, that would be a Megan question, but because different states handle this differently in terms of whether they count club leaders, episodic volunteers, those kind of things. So I would verify that with the state office if you have any questions about what categories of leaders are covered. New youth who enroll after the policy is established or renewed each year are automatically covered until the policy renews. So just make sure that you are getting official enrollment paperwork done as soon as possible for your kiddos when they come into your program, and that will make sure that they are covered under that annual policy. The policy does cover expenses incurred within 52 weeks from the date of the accident. So if there's something like a broken bone that requires physical therapy or surgery or those types of things, up to the policy maximum and up to a year from the date of the accident, we can continue paying for expenses that are incurred within that time frame. Now, that doesn't mean wait until a year out to send stuff in, but up to a year from the date of the accident, we can still continue to cover things. I won't read through this whole chart, but this is the benefits for the annual policy. Most of the claims that we see are falling within this top row here, accident, medical, and surgical treatment of a maximum benefit of $5,000. As you'll see, we do have some benefits for dental expenses as well as accidental death and dismemberment. We do not see those types of claims very often, but I will say that when we have had, unfortunately, loss of life claims, in many circumstances, those are cases where there was a vehicle accident, a serious vehicle accident on the way to or from an event. So both with the annual policy as well as with special activities, direct travel to and from that event is covered. So if you're not sure about what direct travel means in general, it is expected if you're driving 4 hours, you're going to stop for gas and lunch and those kind of things. But if you stop and go to the zoo or stop and go to the mall just for fun, that may not be covered. But general direct travel to and from locations is covered under both types of policies. A few things to tell you that are not covered under annual policies. Again, I'm not going to read through the entire list, but the asterisk ones there, I do like to hit. Illness is not covered under the annual policy. If you ever have a multiple day overnight type event, you can add illness coverage at the 25 or 30 cent level under special activities coverage. You also cannot, the annual policy also does not cover downhill winter sports. So things like skiing, tubing, sledding, any of that kind of stuff. Cross-country skiing is fine, but downhill, you've got to take out special activities. And that includes for if you have skiing clubs, things that meet regularly, you would have to take out special activities for the individual dates for those types of events. The other one I always really like to highlight here is children under the age of 5. We can't cover kids under the age of 5 under special activities either, but it is really important that you and especially your volunteer leaders, folks know that are are, doing programming for 4-H in your county and the community, that they know that if there are kids under the age of 5, whether it be siblings or additional children that a volunteer might have, that kind of thing, if they attend meetings or programs, which we know sometimes, 4-H is a family activity, so we know sometimes younger kids may be, in the building or in the room when events are happening, but those children under the age of 5 must be supervised by their parent or guardian, and they are not covered under this annual policy. And our definition of 5 goes by what each state's requirement is for that minimum clover bud age. So if it's, they turn 5 on March 15th and they can immediately start participating, or whether it's they have to wait until the next 4-H year or the next calendar year or that kind of thing. So make sure that you are aware of that distinction. And let us know if you have any kind of questions about that. The other type of policy that we have is special activities coverage. So special activities is designed for individual kind of programs and events. It is an online activity report that you submit in advance of an event with an estimated number of participants, and then you pay for the actual number of participants after the event is complete, or the policy minimum of $8. The coverage for special activities starts at 20 cents per person per day, again with an $8 minimum per event. The $8 minimum applies per day if it is a multiple non-consecutive days. So keep that in mind when you are setting up programming. So for instance, if you had a sewing class where they're meeting every Monday for a month, the $8 minimum would apply to each one of those days. The $8 minimum applies to the whole event if it is multiple consecutive days. So if you had, the same sewing class that met Monday through Friday, and you only had 3 kids at the 30-cent rate, it would not add up to $8. You just round up to the $8 and pay that premium. Special activities, you are able to include all registered participants and volunteers involved in the operation of the event, regardless of their 4-H enrollment. So if an example I like to use sometimes is like a livestock show. So if you have a livestock show where you have 4-Hers and FFA members, and you want to make sure that those FFA members and any other volunteers that you have for that day are covered. You would need to count and cover all participants, including your enrolled 4-Hers, because it's blanket coverage. So in order for anyone to be covered, everyone has to be covered. It does have to be a controlled environment, so everyone kind of arriving and departing in the same general time frame versus something like an open house or a community fair type event. Everyone has the same location, that type of thing. If you're not sure about whether something is a controlled environment, don't hesitate to reach out and I'll give you some guidance on that. But there's a slide here that gives you some examples of what might be considered. And again, all participants must be covered if anyone is covered, but you cannot cover spectators and members of the general public. So going back to that example of the livestock show, you have your kids who are showing up to exhibit. You might have parents who are not already enrolled as a volunteer who are helping with unloading trailers and bidding and things like that. You might have judges or ringmasters or people who are, running gates, handing out ribbons, any of that kind of stuff. All of those folks would be what we would consider involved in the operation of the event and would be able to be covered under that special activities policy for the day, but you could not count let's say a grandparent who is just coming to sit in the audience for the show. The special activities policy does cover accident and illness at the 25 and 30-cent level. Illness cannot be a pre-existing condition, and it must manifest itself during the covered event. So again, the most common times that we see approved illnesses are for multiple day, overnight type incidents. and no upfront payment is required. So this is really nice, especially if you're working on a tighter budget. It's really nice to know that you do not have to pay for the coverage in advance of the event. If something happens and you think you're going to have 100 people and you only end up having 20, you're only obligated to pay for the actual number of participants or that $8 minimum. And if a program cancels or the date changes, we just need notification in writing in order to make that cancellation. And no premium is due for canceled programs or events. Um, there is the one caveat though, because I just got a question this week about it. If there is an event, let's again going back to that livestock show, you've got the livestock show and you have 54 Hers and 4 FFA members, and you take out that coverage because you want to make sure you cover the FFA members, but you have to count and cover all 54 people total. The day of the show rolls around and the bus breaks down and the FFA members don't show up. You are still obligated to pay for the coverage because the event happened, and coverage was bound for it. So that is important to know. Um, and this type of coverage can be used for collaborative programs. So again, if you're working with other community organizations or county departments or any of those kind of things, we see this a lot for like ag field days or different types of programs or events like that. You can utilize the coverage. It should be something that 4-H and Extension has an active role in kind of planning and executing the event versus, maybe just you as the 4-H educator are attending to, do a booth station at that type of event. So, keep that in mind. And again, if you have questions or are not sure what's appropriate, you can always reach out to me and I'll be happy to kind of clarify that for you. Again, not going to read through the full list of coverage here, but just to point out the main differences again, option A does not cover illnesses. Option B and option C do have coverage for illness. So if you're doing multiple day overnight events, particularly, it is a good idea to have that option B or C coverage. I also recommend that for smaller events, if it fits into your budget, in most cases, it's good to go ahead and choose option C so that you get the highest benefits. If you have, 20 people for one day, your calculated premium would only be $6. But if you choose the 30-cent option, you get $5,000. You have to round up and pay the $8 anyway. You get $5,000 coverage versus 2,500 if you choose that option C. So kind of keep that in mind. Um, the next slide here is a flow chart that I put together that is generally helpful for folks kind of trying to determine when and where you need, special activities coverage. It is not completely, foolproof, obviously. And this is sort of a generic thing that I use for all states. So it looks a little bit different sometimes for folks with statewide coverage, but just kind of keep this in mind. And you can refer to this or reach out to me if ever you've got questions about what that looks like. And I will send a separate PDF of that to you, Megan, so that you have that as a separate document. Few general things, just kind of like tips, tricks, hints, do's and don'ts sort of stuff. So do hope for the best and plan for the worst. Yeah. So it is less common these days that folks do not have any kind of personal major medical coverage, but it does still happen. There are folks that even if they have personal coverage, they may be underinsured. They may have an extremely high deductible that would make it very difficult if they're, if somebody in their family experienced a big injury. They may still be on the hook for several $1,000s, which can be a very difficult thing for a lot of families. Knowing the details of your policy and who and what is covered, when does coverage begin and end is really important. That North Dakota annual policy is the one that you will use in most circumstances. But if you take out special activities coverage, the serial number is how we identify that, and that will be found in your confirmation of coverage email. If you're not sure about any of that information, don't hesitate to let us know. In terms of, when does coverage begin and end, an example that I always like to use is there was a 4-H club meeting that was held at a leader's home. After the meeting had finished, everybody was going outside to meet their parents to get picked up for at the end of the meeting. And a child from family A went up to the family B that had their family dog in the back of the pickup truck. And they went to pet the dog, and the dog bit the child. Because that was not part of the scheduled program or activity, we were not able to cover it. So do keep that in mind, and that is something to make sure your volunteers are aware of. Again, just protecting them, protecting the participants. Another example was kids climbing the tree outside of the extension office after the meeting was completely over and they were just waiting for their parents. Somebody fell out of the tree and broke an arm. That was another one that was unfortunately not able to be covered because it wasn't during the scheduled event. So just keep that in mind. It is really important that you, as the educator, are taking care of the immediate need first. Take care of everyone, keep them calm. Do not be worrying about calling me from or emailing us from the beside the ambulance. Take care of those immediate needs first, ensure everybody is safe, and then, call me next week. Don't panic. But with that being said, keeping accurate records and making sure to send in your paperwork, like a claim form and any incident report forms and whatever else you need to share for NDSU is really important. Keeping those accurate records and sending that stuff in to us while it's fresh in your mind can be really helpful, and also avoid situations where it's several, weeks, months out, and someone discovers that something hasn't been filed, and at that point sometimes we're unable to provide coverage if we don't get notification in a timely manner. It is really important that anytime, and again, back to that more than a Band-Aid, anytime there is an injury at a program that I usually say more than Band-Aid, but anything that involves outside medical treatment, it is best practice to go ahead and send us a claim form. It is always better for us to have that and not need it than the other way around. And that may be a circumstance where, again, a kid sprains an ankle or jams a finger or something like that. They might have one visit to urgent care, and if all the family has is, a $50 copay, they may say, don't worry about it, and, we can be able to move on. But there may be complications further down the line. So it's really important to submit that, make sure that we get it on file. And, the worst case scenario with that is that we send out a couple of reminder letters asking for bills and they don't need to move forward. But if you don't file it and then it gets 6 months out and they're $4,000 in bills, sometimes we're unable to help with that. And again, communication is really important. If you have an incident that requires a claim, particularly make sure that you are communicating with that parent or guardian, that you're communicating with the state 4-H office, that you're communicating with us at your earliest convenience, so that we can make sure that we are crossing our proverbial T's and dotting our I's and make sure that everybody's getting taken care of as much as we can. A few things specifically about filing claims. So the claims information is available on our website. There is a fillable PDF form that you should be able to download and type directly into. That can be submitted to us via mail, fax, or email. I do tend to recommend emailing whenever possible, because that way you will have a record and we will have a record of when it was first submitted. So that's really important. Again, make sure that you submit anything that is required for North Dakota 4-H extension for the university. Your county may have those types of forms as well. Make sure that you've got those. And fill out our claim form as completely and accurately as possible. It must be completed by staff or volunteer who is not related to the patient. So if you, as an educator, or one of your volunteers has their personal child that is a 4-H'er that is injured at some point, just make sure that those forms are completed by either someone else on staff, another volunteer, someone who is unrelated to the patient. Okay. And that is the last of my info slides. I'm going to throw up my contact information here, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions you might have. Um, and if there's anything that, that we didn't get to today, I will take a look at the chat and see if there are questions, and then I'm happy to answer questions here as well. But I always, and I think I've said it several times, I always encourage folks to reach out anytime you've got a question. That's literally what I'm here for. And I try to get back to folks pretty quickly. Because again, I've been in your shoes. I know when you've got a program happening tomorrow and something's stressing you out. I definitely will try to get back to you as soon as possible whenever I can. So thank you very much for your time today. I will end my slideshow here and then I'll pop back into the Zoom window. And like I said, I am going to send a PDF of this and that flow chart to Megan so it can be shared. But anytime you have questions, just call, email, carrier pigeon, whatever works for you, and I'll be happy to help.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. The presentation slides will be provided, and if y'all click on that link that I put in the chat, that takes you to the Google Drive area where we have our 4-H insurance folder. And so I'll put the slides there, and I'll also send them out when I send the link out, the recording. So if you want to share it with your volunteers, you're welcome to do that too. So now just open your mic for questions, or you can put in the chat box, or if you have any situations that Erin can help you work through, I'm sure somebody else would have the same question too.
I guess I have a question, and it has to do with horses.
Mhm.
So I guess, how do we know if our um, like youth are covered with that $2, like under the blanket policy, I guess, if that makes sense.
So Megan may know a little bit better in terms of how the state does those numbers, but in general, folks will use their like 4-H online registration and look at how many are doing horse projects or ES 237. Those types of methods are what most folks use to determine that. And in general, I recommend that if someone is their primary or like what their main thing that they do is horse, they should be counted and covered at that $2 rate, versus like, a community club that maybe they do horse 2 or 3 out of the 12 meetings that they have in a year.
Do you
Okay.
know, Erin, if India like we paid $2 for some kids and some not? Or how would I
Let's
know that?
see. Let me look back and see if I can find the renewal form from last year. And I can get back to you on that in a minute.
I'm sorry, Sammy, I think you were about to say something again.
I just had one other question, but I can wait until we find this out.
Okay. My email is shut down, so it might take me a minute. So if you want to go ahead with your other question, I can keep looking at that.
Okay, the other question is, um, so we just basically need to have if we ever do like the special event insurance, for something, we just need to have like, do we ever need to show like proof of registration or anything? Or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, so you don't have to like turn that into us, but it does have to be, if there were ever a question, we would need to be able to verify that, yes, Sally Smith was a registered participant in this program or event that was covered. In general, we don't ask for that, but if there ever were a question about it, that would be what we would kind of go back to is like a registration or a sign-in form or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I have a couple questions. Um, for special activities insurance, I know, I'm sure like fairs and parades, but what else would qualify as special activities? Like, we do a year-end awards banquet.
Mhm.
Would we need to have special activities insurance for something like that? Or how do you know, I guess, when you need it or not?
Mm. So there's no hard and fast, always this, always never that kind of answer, unfortunately. That flow chart that I included in the presentation and that I'm going to send to Megan as well is often a really good way to kind of start the process. Usually, and some of it is a risk assessment item, and some of it is um, and different counties will handle it different ways. So for instance, if you are doing something like an awards banquet, every family, 4-H family is invited, maybe members of the community, all those kind of folks. They're all coming in and they're going to sit in the auditorium and have dinner and then have the presentation of the awards. You can cover all of those folks with special activities. But then it's a matter of what is the level of risk associated with that type of, sit down program or event. Um, you know, is it possible that a grandma walking in will, slip on ice in the parking lot and still, could file a claim under that? Absolutely. So, I can't answer the should question, but it is available for those types of programs or events. In general, any kind of workshops, day camps, um, just scheduled programs or events that you're doing, that special activities coverage is available for you. And it's just a matter of, who can be covered. If you have a program that everyone that is participating is already enrolled as a 4-H'er, so then you wouldn't need any additional coverage because they would already be covered under the annual policy.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Um, and then my other question is like a fair achievement day question. Um, do we, I know that it covers the kids and the volunteers and the leaders and parents that are helping, but what about like fairgoers? So like say if someone came up to pet a horse and they got their foot stepped on, or if a steer knocked a fair goer down. I mean, what about those that are not tied to 4-H?
So that would fall under the spectators and members of the general public that they would not be able to be covered under our policies.
Okay.
In most circumstances, there may be some kind of liability or other coverage that the fairgrounds or fair board might have. So
Mm.
there may be coverage under that type of policy, but we are not able to cover those folks.
Okay. Okay. I'm just curious because our county just bought our fairgrounds and everyone's trying to figure out how everything's working, and they told us we needed to get insurance. Well, I'm thinking they're thinking for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But, we just know to have it for our people. So we'll get together with them and explain that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So then back to that question that she had, and you gave like the example of like at awards if the grandma slipped and fell on the ice. So
Mm-hmm.
if she's like like a spectator kind of, or just, coming to watch, is she still covered under that then?
But again, and so that's again that kind of gray area sort of thing. But if it is for something like an awards banquet where you did count and cover all of those participants because it's a controlled environment, everyone is going to be arriving and departing at the same time. Even if they're not an active participant in that type of program, then they would be able to be like registered, assuming you're doing some kind of count for the meal, or you have to know how many spaces you're going to have. You would have some sort of way of verifying that that person, was there attending that event and was eligible to be
Okay.
to be covered under the policy.
Okay.
And kind of going with what Emily Burkett asked about the incident report form, there are incident report forms for NDSU. And so, yes, if something did happen, in addition to filing with Aaron, you need to fill out that incident report form. And I think that also goes to y'all's supervisor as well. And then if they're not NDSU people, then like if it's y'all, it'd be NDSU, but like non-NDSU people, there's a non-NDSU one and an NDSU one for incident report. So that would need to be filled out in addition to filing the claim for the insurance as well.
Any other questions? I know it's a lot of information to digest, apparently, especially if this is the first time, this has kind of been presented to you. But it's almost sort of deceptively simple. We try to keep it as easy as possible. And I try to be as available as I can be for questions and concerns.
And so Aaron,
And um,
Looks like Leah.
yeah, okay. I have a question for you. So, and I think I might know the answer already, but our extension office is kind of quote unquote in charge of our riding arena. And so I have a family that's going to put on a horse clinic, but it's not like directly tied for our 4-H members. Like it's open to the public and stuff. And they were wondering about insurance if they had us pay for that insurance for them. But our county also provides waivers for people to sign as well. So
Mhm.
we wouldn't be in charge of doing the insurance for that, right?
Correct. And
Okay.
would not be that would not be the type of event that would be eligible. Now, if
Okay.
you were partnering with them and they like whether it's just something, whether it's a fun thing or maybe it's their
Yep.
business or whatever, if 4-H were partnering and saying, hey, you can do this, horse clinic, but we're also going to have membership drive, like kind of thing, you may be
Yep.
and we're going to do some educational activities as a part of it, then it might be appropriate to do it under special activities. But otherwise that wouldn't really fit.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
and Aaron, I was just going to circle back to the $2 a person for this horse youth.
Mhm.
So how
Mhm.
would we find that out? Like if
I
so
can
you're saying,
have somebody in my office pull
okay,
the form from last year. I just don't have it in my email. I thought maybe I had it in my email, but I can't find it in my email.
okay. And so
Um,
it would say like you paid for X number of youth at the $2 rate and X number of youth at the $1
correct.
rate. Okay.
Yes.
And so if that youth might be enrolled in the horse project, like in Sam's County, then they would already be covered because that youth was
Mhm.
enrolled in the horse project. So that kind of says that if your youth are doing horse, then make sure they're enrolled in the horse project. So we know that.
Mhm.
So that's important in 4-H online. So we include them. Yeah, I would just like to know
Yes.
because I don't.
Yeah.
I looked at the certificate of insurance and I don't see anything where you can say that we
Yeah, we
paid.
don't have the numbers broken down on
Okay.
the COI.
Okay. Did anybody
Any other
else have any other
questions?
questions? Those are good questions that are being asked.
Y'all don't mind. I'll go pull the hard copy file. I'm in the office. It'll just take me about 30 seconds. That way I'll have an answer.
Okay. Did anybody else think of anything else?
Sorry, I guess I have another question. So do we need special event insurance then for like our livestock show at the fair?
Was everybody that's I would say if everybody that's participating in it,
Is in
already
4-H.
is already enrolled, then you wouldn't need it. But if you're wanting to cover like a judge or somebody outside, then you would.
Does
volunteer or somebody that's not already enrolled volunteer.
what do other counties typically do? I guess if anyone else wants to kind of like, has anyone else ever taken out special event insurance for their livestock show for 4-H?
I take special event insurance out for our achievement days for the whole week. And we also do that for all of our big events like archery, air rifle, the big stuff.
So
Okay.
Emily, when you do it for your entire achievement days, how do you guess on a number?
Yeah, so I used to just blanket everybody. Well, because they're coming and going. So this last time for our archery, even someone from American Income Life was like, "Hey, make sure it's all your like the numbers are your members and your volunteers. You don't need to put like 300 extra spectators." And at our archery event, we had a grandparent have a medical ish thing happen. It ended up being okay, but the ambulance came and everything like that. And because archery is so fluid, people come and go as they please. It's not a we couldn't cover him on our American Income Life, but if it was a volunteer who had an issue, who was helping, then we could. Um, so I've seen this at other counties where people get hurt or whatever, fall off a horse. NDSU does have an incident report form, and I don't know if very many people know about it. It's really simple to fill out. Lois is super nice. You can tell I've done this a lot of times. Um, and Aaron's awesome as well. So uh, that's kind of how I looked at it. So does that help answer your question, Mindy?
Yeah, yep, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. This is Lisa from Burley. If our 4-H, just say for achievement days, if our 4-Hers and leaders and volunteers are all covered, like through NDSU, correct? Like we have a policy, the blanket coverage, who would be covered? I mean, who are we getting this insurance for? That's where I got confused. Because if you say that the spectators are not covered, is it just like for the families of the 4-Hers that we know that
So,
are there?
yeah,
Because
it
we
would
can't
be that
control
type
the
of
spectator.
category. Yeah, it would be that type of category. So if, so achievement days are I always compare them to a fair, right? That's essentially what y'all call your county fairs. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, achievement days. Yeah, same idea.
Yeah. Okay. So for that, like you've got that week, right? And you have, let's call it, 200 4-H kids and volunteers that you already know are, under that annual policy, they're going to be covered. If you want coverage for the parents who are helping, unload trailers or set up in the barns, hanging banners, moving gates, those kind of folks who volunteer for that event but may not be 4-H leaders throughout the year, then that would be the time where you would want to take out that special activities coverage and you would count and cover everyone, including the enrolled 4-Hers. And the reason for that, again, it is it is a blanket policy. So in order for anyone to be covered, everyone has to be covered under the same type of policy. And so the reason for that is this is kind of an extreme example, but in that kind of event, you have a tornado hits the building and you have 150 people that are injured. It would be very difficult, if not impossible, for us to sort out, okay, these 50 people should be covered under the annual policy with, a $5,000 max benefit, whereas these people should be covered under special activities with only a $2,500 max benefit. So getting everybody under the same blanket ensures that the coverage is consistent and that everybody is, covered under the same type of policy. Did that answer your question, Lisa?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And I found the form, just so y'all know, so last year it looks like there were around 824 youth that were covered as horse members. Leanne signed off on the application, so she probably, or somebody in the office would have an idea of how they came up with that number. But there was a breakdown for, regular and horse members and leaders.
Okay, that's good to know because then that's probably the number of youth that are enrolled in the horse project. So I would say that was,
Mhm.
we got that through 4-H Online probably. So that's good to know.
Mhm.
Sam, does that help?
Yeah, it does. I'll just make sure that all of our youth in that we have one club that's just for they just do horses. So I'll just make sure that they all have that enrolled in a project for horse.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's how they're getting the numbers through 4-H Online, I'm sure. Whatever project they enrolled in. So thank you for looking that up, Erin.
Mhm. Yep. Like I said, I can't stress enough. I know that this is a lot of information. It's not something you have to deal with every day. It can be confusing and it can be, a little bit overwhelming, particularly if you're dealing with it, mid-incident, when somebody has been injured or whatever. But I just will always encourage you to reach out if you ever have questions or concerns. I have been in your shoes and absolutely understand kind of what you're doing at any given time, and want to be here as a resource for you. I appreciate the feedback from folks that have said I've been helpful. I hope that continues.
So I have a quick question. If
Mhm.
so we have where somebody younger can show in an open type of thing that's at our fair. If we did a special event insurance, then would they be covered? Like
We
say they're
cannot
up
cover those youth under the age of 5 by whatever.
no matter what. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yep,
Thank you.
and that's a good point to note that we don't have a whole lot of specific restrictions other than the downhill winter sports, which is a weird insurance legal thing. We don't have a lot of specific restrictions on like activities. So somebody, recently reached out to me from another state asking about can we cover something with a mechanical bull? We don't have that kind of restriction, but we go by whatever the state 4-H guidelines are for things like that. So whether that's age, things like helmets being required for horse activities, or clover buds can only show in showmanship, or those types of rules, we go by whatever your state's guidelines on that type of thing are. I might have frozen again.
No, you're not frozen. No, you're not.
Okay. I looked frozen to myself for a second.
Anybody else have any more questions? These are all good questions to ask. Okay. Well, don't forget on the 22nd, that's Stacy Winter from Purchasing talking about contracts, and it will be recorded for those of you that'll be the support staff conference. And then May 20th, Sam Lawman is going to be talking about getting ready for fairs and achievement days. So thank you all for joining us today, and thank you so much, Erin, for coming again and doing our yearly update for insurance. That really helps a whole lot and getting our questions answered. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Everybody have a great rest of your day.